There comes a moment in your life when noise stops making sense, when answers stop arriving from people, from books, from searching, and suddenly a strange teacher appears, one with no voice, no form, no intention to please you, silence. And if you're patient enough, silence reveals everything you were too loud to hear. You may not realize it now, but something deep inside you is tired. Not tired in the way sleep can fix, but tired from the constant pulling, pushing, grasping, and performing. Tired from thinking too much. Tired from holding conversations that never touch the truth. Tired from trying to keep up with a world that moves faster than your soul ever asked to go. Maybe you can feel it, that subtle ache behind your ribs, that quiet whisper you keep postponing, that longing for rest that has nothing to do with physical exhaustion. It's the longing to return to yourself. But instead, life hands you noise, the kind of noise that wears many disguises, obligations, screens, expectations, overthinking, the constant hum of trying to be someone, the pressure of being productive, the fear of missing out, the fear of falling behind, the echo of old wounds repeating themselves in your mind. Noise is not just sound. Noise is everything that keeps you away from your inner truth. And somewhere along the way, without noticing it, you became afraid of silence. Because silence asks you to sit with what is real. Silence asks you to stop running. And we human beings, we are runners by habit. We escape into noise because noise distracts us from the storms inside. But there comes a time, a rare time, when noise loses its flavor, when even your own thoughts become repetitive, when you read the same lines in your mind so many times that they no longer hold meaning, when you begin to suspect that perhaps the truth is not something you can think your way into. You may not realize it yet, but this moment, this exhaustion is not a failure. It's an initiation, a doorway, a sacred invitation to a different kind of knowing. Because when the mind grows tired, the soul begins to speak, and the soul speaks through silence. Not the silence you experience when a room goes quiet, not the silence between words, but the deeper silence, the one beneath experience, beneath identity, beneath all the stories you tell yourself. This silence is not empty, it's full, brimming with messages you've ignored for years, holding answers you didn't know you were seeking, ready to show you the parts of yourself you've been waiting to meet. But to receive it, you must finally stop turning away. You must let silence become your teacher. Maybe recently you found yourself craving solitude. Maybe your social mask feels heavy. Maybe the things that used to entertain you now feel hollow. Maybe you've been waking up with questions in your chest. What am I doing? Why do I feel disconnected? Is there something more than this constant chasing? These questions are not weaknesses. They are the signs of a consciousness ripening. Something in you is shifting, maturing, shedding, and this shift is not loud. It is silent, just like the way dawn arrives, not with fireworks, but with a soft, inevitable glow. Just like wisdom not shouted, but whispered deep within. Silence is the language of transformation. It is the space where your scattered pieces begin to return, where your breath finds its rhythm again, where your stories lose their grip and your truth begins to rise. Silence doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't require belief or effort. It asks only for your presence, and yet it gives you everything: clarity you couldn't think your way into, peace you couldn't search your way toward, understanding that feels less like learning and more like remembering. But most of all, silence returns you to yourself. And perhaps that is what you've been missing all along. Let's be honest, most of us don't know how to be silent anymore. We know how to scroll. We know how to react. We know how to fill space with words that mean little because silence makes us uncomfortable. We know how to distract ourselves with plans, with goals, with entertainment, with endless mental chatter. We fear stillness because stillness exposes what we've been postponing. Silence shows us the conversations we never had, the wounds we never tended to, the dreams we abandoned, the fears we swallowed, the questions that haunt us in quiet moments, the parts of ourselves we don't know how to face, so we bury ourselves in motion. Movement feels safer than introspection. Noise feels safer than honesty. But eventually the noise becomes heavier than the truth. There comes a night when you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing you've become a stranger in your own life. There comes a morning when you look in the mirror and see someone performing, not living. There comes a conversation where you hear your own voice from a distance, and it sounds like a script you didn't write. There comes a moment when noise no longer protects you, it suffocates you. And in that moment, silence begins to call you home, not with force, not with urgency, but with a soft, persistent knowing there is something within you that needs to be heard. Sit with me. Silence is not empty, it's a mirror. It reflects your inner landscape with honesty no human voice can offer. In silence you see how often you betray yourself, how often you overgive, how often you pretend, how often you shrink your truth to fit into someone else's comfort, how often your mind runs while your heart waits patiently behind. In silence, you notice the jokes you laugh at but don't find funny, the apologies you give for simply existing, the habits that drain you, the patterns that repeat like forgotten lessons. In silence, your life speaks, but silence can also be terrifying at first, because silence pulls the curtains away from everything you've suppressed, the heartbreak you never processed, the childhood pain you dismissed as not a big deal, the failures you quietly blamed yourself for, the dreams you told yourself you were unworthy of pursuing. Silence doesn't judge these things, it simply reveals them. It spreads them gently on the inner table of your awareness and says, look, these are the pieces you need to reclaim. And this is where most people run, back to noise, back to distraction, back to mental clutter, back to the familiar discomfort of avoiding themselves. But if you stay, if you breathe through the discomfort, silence becomes something entirely different. It becomes a sanctuary, a temple, a teacher, a doorway. It becomes the place where understanding flows without effort, where you are no longer chasing answers, you are receiving them. Silence is where your deepest truths rise from the depths like pearls, where you remember that you are more than your thoughts, more than your past, more than your anxieties. Silence is where you find you, not the version shaped by society, not the version shaped by fear, and not the version shaped by expectation, but the version shaped by truth. And once you taste this truth, even for a moment, something in you changes forever. You begin to crave it. You begin to protect it. You begin to return to it like a pilgrim returning to a sacred well, because silence is not the absence of life, it is the essence of it. There is a moment quiet, almost invisible, when silence stops feeling like emptiness and begins to feel like understanding. It happens subtly. You sit alone, perhaps with nothing but the sound of your breath, and something inside you finally unclenches. The mind, which has been trying so hard for so long, softens its grip. Thoughts still appear, but they lose their urgency. They walk by instead of pulling you into their storms. You begin to realize that silence is not asking you to think, it's asking you to see. This is the first lesson of silence. Not every thought deserves your belief. You begin to notice the mind's habits with a clarity you never had before, how it exaggerates, how it loops, how it creates narratives to protect you from imagined danger, how it pulls you away from the present moment, how it rehearses conversations that never happen, how it relives wounds that no longer need reliving. Silence is not here to fight your mind. It's here to show you that the mind is not the whole of you. It is only one voice among many. When you sink into silence, another voice begins to speak, one quieter, deeper, older. This voice does not argue. It does not repeat. It does not panic. It simply knows this is the voice of the heart. Or, if you prefer a more ancient language, the voice of the soul. It speaks in intuition, in sudden clarity, in a feeling that something is true long before you can articulate why. It speaks in the way your breath deepens when you consider a path that aligns with you. It speaks in the way your body tightens when you ignore your boundaries. It speaks in the way your chest warms when you think of your real purpose. Silence is the environment in which this voice becomes audible. And once you hear it, truly hear it, you realize how long it has been guiding you, even in the background of your loudest years. The second lesson of silence is this: peace is not found by adding more, it's found by subtracting. We live in a culture obsessed with accumulation, more productivity, more achievements, more validation, more possessions, more knowledge, more opinions, more stimulation, more goals. But silence teaches you that the soul does not grow through addition, it grows through release, letting go of what no longer fits, letting go of outdated versions of yourself, letting go of stories that keep you small, letting go of attachments that drain your energy, letting go of expectations you never agreed to, letting go of the idea that you must always become more to be worthy. In silence, you discover that subtracting the unnecessary reveals the essential. What remains is clarity, pure, unforced clarity. You begin to see what actually matters, who actually matters, what actually feels truthful in your bones, what actually nourishes your spirit. This is why the mystics, from Sufis to Zen monks, spent so much time in silence, not because they were escaping life, but because they were learning how to live it. Sufis say that silence is the breath of God. Zen says that silence is the master that teaches without teaching. Mystics across every tradition say that silence is the doorway through which the infinite steps into the finite. What they all mean is this: silence is where you meet reality without distortion. The third lesson of silence is something few people understand. Silence is not passive, it transforms you. When you sit in real quietude, the kind of quiet that is not about absence but presence, something profound begins to rearrange inside you. Old emotional knots loosen, subconscious tensions unwind, buried grief comes up to be released, insights rise without effort like flames rising from embers. Your inner compass recalibrates itself, your intuition sharpens, your ego softens its armor. Silence does not simply pause your life, it rewrites it. It teaches you how to move differently with intention, clarity, and gentleness. The ego, loud, hungry, restless, begins to dissolve in the vastness of stillness. It realizes that it is not the center of the universe. It is not the author of your destiny. It is simply a tool you use to navigate the world, not the truth of who you are. Silence shifts you out of ego consciousness and into presence. Presence is not thinking. Presence is experiencing. Presence is the moment when the past loosens its grip and the future loses its anxiety. Presence is the raw awareness of now, and in that presence, you discover that life is not happening somewhere else. Life is here, in your breath, in your heartbeat, in the quiet intelligence of the present moment. Silence teaches you that you do not have to chase the meaning of life, you simply have to stop drowning out the meaning that is already speaking to you. The truth is this: everything you need to know is already inside you. Silence simply makes it visible. Wisdom means little if it cannot be lived. So here are simple, gentle, accessible ways you can allow silence to become your teacher, not in theory, but in your everyday life. None of these require effort. None require rituals or long hours of meditation. They simply require presence. Just 2 minutes. Sit on your bed, or your chair, or the floor. Close your eyes and breathe. Not to meditate, not to silence your thoughts, not to achieve anything, just to sit. 2 minutes of intentional presence is enough to begin reshaping your inner world. The next time someone speaks to you, listen without planning your reply. Notice how much of our conversation is noise, how rarely we feel heard, how different it feels to simply be present. Silence is not only internal, it is relational. Creating space for others also creates space within yourself. Instead of reaching for your phone when you wake up, sit for one breath. Instead of filling silence with music on your walk, listen to the world itself. Instead of turning on the TV for background noise, sit with the natural hum of your surroundings. Small shifts become profound over time. Noise fades, life appears. A soft question, a gentle question, one that leads you inward rather than outward. Questions like, is this truly what I want? What am I avoiding? What is asking to be felt? What truth am I afraid to admit? What would I choose if I wasn't trying to impress anyone? Ask, then listen. The answer does not come from thinking. It comes from the silence beneath the thinking. Your breath is the oldest teacher you have. It has been with you since your first moment. It knows how to return you to yourself. Every time you inhale, life enters. Every time you exhale, life releases. Breathe consciously for 1 minute each day. Feel your breath, feel your presence. You will be amazed at how much clarity can arise from something so simple. Pause in the middle of your day. Stop in the middle of a thought. Stop in the middle of rushing. Stop in the middle of overthinking. Just stop for a single breath. Observe the quiet that appears the moment you stop feeding the momentum of your mind. This is silence in its purest form, the gap between thought and presence. When you feel sadness rising, or anxiety tightening your chest, or anger simmering inside, you don't drown it in distractions. Sit with it. Let the emotion have its full shape. Let silence cradle it. Emotions are not trying to overwhelm you, they're trying to communicate. Silence gives them the space to express their message, and once expressed, they soften. Before you sleep, close your eyes and feel your breath. Not to fix anything, not to solve anything, just to return. Your mind carried you through the day, but your soul carries you through your life. Silence reconnects you. to that deeper current. These practices are not techniques, they are invitations, small openings through which silence can enter your life naturally, effortlessly. You don't have to force anything. Silence cannot be forced, it can only be allowed. And slowly, gently, you will begin to notice changes. You'll speak more honestly. You'll worry less about being understood. Your decisions will feel clearer. Your reactions will soften. Your inner world will feel more spacious. Your life will feel more aligned. Because silence won't just be something you visit, it will become something you live. There is something I want to tell you, something simple, something quiet, something true. You are not lost. You think you are because the world taught you to look for yourself in noise, in accomplishment, in validation, in identity, in constant activity. But you were never meant to find yourself out there. You were meant to find yourself in here, in the quiet chambers of your inner life. You have not been failing. You have been searching in the wrong direction. You have been listening to the loudest voices instead of the truest one. Silence is not the absence of answers. Silence is the space where answers finally come home. Every moment you felt alone. Every moment you felt confused. Every moment you felt disconnected from who you are. You were not breaking. You were being called inward. You were being prepared for this. The moment when silence becomes your companion instead of your fear. The moment when you stop running from your life and begin walking into it with open eyes. The moment when you realize that the wisdom you've been chasing was within you all along. You are entering a new chapter, not one defined by noise, but by awareness. Not one defined by performance, but by presence. Not one defined by constant striving, but by gentle alignment. This chapter will not be loud. It will not announce itself. It will unfold quietly, the way dawn unfolds softly, steadily, inevitably. You will begin to notice your breath feels deeper, your thoughts feel kinder, your decisions feel clearer, your boundaries feel natural, your relationships feel more authentic, your life feels more yours. This is the power of silence. It gives you back to yourself. Let me leave you with this truth. Silence is not the teacher you seek. Silence is the teacher you become. Because when you learn from silence, you begin to carry its wisdom into the world. You speak with intention. You listen with presence. You love with depth. You walk with clarity. You move with gentleness. You live from your center, not from your fear. Your presence becomes a quiet blessing to those around you, not because you try, but because silence has shaped you into someone who no longer needs noise to feel whole. One day soon, you will sit alone, and you will feel at home, not because life is perfect, not because everything is figured out, not because you've solved all your questions, but because you finally know how to be with yourself. Because silence no longer feels like emptiness. It feels like truth. It feels like peace. It feels like awakening. When silence finally teaches you everything, you don't become someone new. You return to who you were before the world became loud. And in that return, you discover a beauty you had forgotten, the quiet miracle of simply being. May you always find the courage to enter the silence, and may the silence reveal the wisdom you were born to remember.